All right, so today we're diving deep into how the Orthodox Church sees the Roman Catholic Church.
Okay.
And to do that, we're going to be taking a look at parts of this academic article.
All right.
It's called How the Orthodox View Rome, The Futility of Reunion.
Hmm.
It's pretty fascinating stuff,
Yeah, it sounds like it.
especially when it goes beyond just sort of like listing out their differences,
Mm-hmm.
but really digs into the history between these two churches and
Right.
how their different views on power and authority have really kind of kept them apart.
Yeah, I mean, there's a long history there and
That's true.
a lot to unpack, so.
Definitely. To kick things off, the article talks about how the Catholic Church kind of operates
Yeah.
as both a religious and a political institution,
Mm-hmm.
and how that sort of creates this tension.
Yeah, and I think the author is kind of trying to get at how,
Right.
especially in modern times, the Catholic Church has really leaned into political activism.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe even at the expense of its spiritual mission.
And he uses Pope Francis as a specific example.
Okay, yeah.
His focus on social justice and how that,
Right.
it's almost like he sees it as like a shift away from the traditional doctrine
Mm-hmm.
to a more kind of worldly approach.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Okay.
The author seems to be saying that this emphasis on social and political matters,
Yeah.
is a sign that the Catholic Church might be prioritizing
Right.
worldly concerns over, spiritual ones.
It's a strong take for sure.
Definitely.
But I will say,
Mm-hmm.
the article does point out that even when you're critiquing another faith,
Yeah.
it's important to be fair
Right.
and consider the full context.
Absolutely.
Like he even brings up the child abuse scandals
Right.
within the Catholic Church.
Yes.
But he cautions against
Mm-mm.
using that as just like a blanket attack.
Yeah, a simplistic attack.
Right, exactly.
On the entire faith.
Yeah.
He acknowledges how serious it is, but also seems to say, let's not use this to make sweeping generalizations.
I think that's a good point because it's so easy to,
Yeah.
to kind of fall into that trap
Mhm.
of forming opinions based on,
Right.
sound bites and headlines
Yeah.
without really understanding the
Exactly.
nuance is important.
Yeah, definitely.
So moving on from that, the article kind of delves into some of the key theological
Okay.
differences between the Orthodox and Catholic churches.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the, main points that he makes is this idea
Right.
that the Orthodox Church has really stayed true
Mm-hmm.
to the teachings of the early church fathers,
Okay.
whereas the Roman Catholic Church has kind of introduced these new ideas that
Mhm.
he sees as,
Right.
theological innovations or even like departures
Okay.
from the original Christian faith. Almost like, they've got the original blueprints and
Yeah.
Catholic Church has gone and, added rooms and
Uh-huh.
changed the architecture.
That's a great way to put it, actually.
Okay, cool.
He actually mentions a quote from Pope Benedict XVI,
Oh, wow.
where
Okay.
he basically said that while the Orthodox churches might have authentic doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
they're essentially stuck in the past.
Oh, wow.
He used the words petrified or calcified
Yes, strong word.
to describe them.
That's going to cause some tension, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine how that would not be well received
Right. Sure.
by the Orthodox.
And that kind of gets to the,
Yeah.
the heart of the divide,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's like you stayed the same,
Right.
you evolved,
Exactly.
and that leads us to a really important distinction that the author makes
Okay.
between the terms schism and heresy.
Okay. All right. Break it down for me. What's the difference?
What's the difference?
Okay. So the author sees schism as
Mhm.
like a separation, right?
Okay.
But when that happens because of a deeper issue,
Okay.
he's arguing that the schism, the split between the Orthodox and Catholic churches,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just like a disagreement or,
Right.
a power struggle.
Mhm.
It was the result of what he sees as underlying heresy
Oh, okay.
within the Catholic Church.
So the separation's like a symptom.
Exactly.
Of
That's
the-
a symptom of a deeper theological problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to him, it's not just about, two groups having different interpretations,
Mm.
but about one group
Right.
deviating from what he sees as the,
Right.
the original true Christian faith.
So he's saying the Catholic Church
Yeah.
introduced these teachings or practices that,
Right.
contradicted the original faith.
Yes.
And that's what ultimately led to
Exactly. That's what ultimately led to the schism.
the schism.
Yeah, and he uses the fact that Rome recognizes some Orthodox traditions
Right.
as being valid
Oh, interesting.
to argue that they actually, they know
Right.
they've strayed from the original teachings.
It's almost like saying,
Yeah.
if you think our traditions are legitimate,
Right.
doesn't that mean you acknowledge
Exactly.
we're holding on to something authentic
Right.
that you've moved away from?
It's a very subtle but powerful
Yeah, that's a good point.
argument. Yeah.
Speaking of things that might cause some tension,
Uh-oh.
the article spends a lot of time talking about
Okay.
the Jesuit order.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is how he characterizes them.
Mm-hmm.
He presents them as this powerful and potentially subversive force
Oh, wow.
within the Catholic Church,
Okay.
highlighting, their historical influence
Mm-hmm.
and what he sees as their role in promoting these
Right.
agendas that he considers to be,
Okay.
secular and globalist.
Okay. So that's
Pretty bold claim. That's a pretty bold claim, yeah.
what specifically does he say about their influence?
Well, he suggests that they
Yeah.
operate with a degree of autonomy
Okay.
that, might even go beyond
Mhm.
the Vatican's control.
Wow.
He goes as far as to compare them to the SS,
Oh, wow.
not in terms of like violence,
Right.
but in their independent power and influence.
I can see why he might think that they're a major obstacle to any kind of,
Right.
reunion.
Is any sort of coming back together, yeah.
But what exactly does he see as their agenda?
Well, he argues that they're really focused on promoting a
Okay.
more worldly, secular
Okay.
vision,
Mhm.
one that he believes might be at odds with,
Of
traditional Catholic teachings.
Mm-hmm.
He suggests they're pushing this
Okay.
globalist agenda
Mm-hmm.
that prioritizes,
Right.
international cooperation and
Yeah.
secular values over.
Over traditional religious beliefs.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a pretty strong
Okay.
critique.
Yeah, it is.
For sure.
It seems like he sees them as,
Yeah.
a driving force behind
Mhm.
the very things that he sees as problematic
Right. Exactly.
in the modern Catholic Church.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And it leads into, his final point,
Mm-hmm.
the impossibility
Right.
and even the danger
Okay.
of
Yeah.
reunion between the two churches.
Okay, I'm interested to hear about this.
Yeah.
Why does he think a reunion is impossible?
Yeah, and why dangerous?
Why dangerous? Yeah. Well, he believes that such a reunion would ultimately require one church
Right.
to basically subsume the other.
Yeah.
So, in his view, that would essentially mean the end of
Right.
one of them
Yeah, that makes sense.
as a distinct entity.
Especially from the Orthodox perspective.
Mhm.
I mean, they wouldn't want to lose their
Right.
unique identity
Yeah.
and traditions.
And he argues that such a union wouldn't be a true reconciliation,
Right.
but rather a forced
Right.
merger
Yeah.
of two fundamentally different
Yeah, like trying to
belief systems.
force a puzzle piece
Right.
into a spot where it doesn't belong.
Exactly.
It might be able to make it fit,
Yeah.
but the picture won't look right.
It's not going to look right.
And you might damage the pieces.
You might break something. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great
good
analogy.
theorist.
It captures
Mhm.
the author's concern
Right.
that a forced union could lead to a distortion
Yeah.
of both faiths
Right.
rather than a true
Yeah.
reconciliation.
And considering the whole thing about,
Yeah.
the influence of the Jesuits,
Yeah.
I mean, I can see how he would view
Right.
any union under the current leadership
Exactly.
as essentially
Yeah.
the Orthodox being subsumed
Yes.
by the Catholic Church.
That's a point that he really
Right.
emphasizes.
Yeah.
He argues that given the current state of affairs
Yeah.
within the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
particularly under Pope Francis,
Right.
any union would likely result in the Orthodox Church having to, accept the authority
Right.
of the Pope,
Which is
which is something that they just view as fundamentally unacceptable.
starter.
A non-starter, yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to his, his core argument that true unity can only come from
Right.
mutual respect
Mhm.
and a recognition of each other's distinct traditions and beliefs.
It's less about erasing the differences
Yeah,
and more about finding a way to
exactly.
coexist
To coexist.
and, learn from each other
yeah,
while still
right.
respecting those differences.
Respecting those differences, yeah.
Yeah.
And he, he concludes by reiterating his belief that a forced union wouldn't be a true reconciliation.
Right.
of two branches of the same faith,
Yeah.
but rather like a merging of two
Yeah, two completely different
distinct religions,
yeah.
each with its own, unique understanding of Christianity.
Yeah, it's
It's a sobering thought,
it really is.
but it's also a, valuable reminder that even within what might seem like,
Right.
a monolithic religious tradition like Christianity,
Yeah.
there can be this
Right.
wide range of perspectives and interpretations.
And understanding those different perspectives, like it's so crucial.
Yeah.
If we actually want to have meaningful dialogue
Absolutely.
and build,
Right.
bridges of understanding
Bridges of understanding and respect.
and respect
Yeah.
across those religious divides.
Across those divides, for sure.
Speaking of different perspectives,
Okay.
yeah, I'm curious about something he mentioned towards the end of the article.
Mm-hmm.
He brings up the famous Fatima apparitions,
Okay.
and he asks
Right.
whether they could be interpreted as
Yeah.
a divine message urging the Catholic Church
Okay.
to return to orthodoxy.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
For those who might not be familiar, the
Right.
Fatima apparitions refer to a series of events in Portugal
Right.
back in 1917,
Yeah.
where 3 shepherd children
Right.
claimed to have witnessed apparitions of the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, and I remember there was a lot of talk about the third secret
Yes, the third
that was revealed years later, and that,
right.
supposedly contained this dire prophecy about the future of the world.
Exactly. And the author,
Right.
from his, Orthodox perspective, suggests that perhaps this
Right.
third sequence could be interpreted as a call for the Catholic Church to return to what he sees as, the true original faith of Christianity.
Yeah.
The faith that's been preserved by the Orthodox Church.
It's a fascinating interpretation.
It's a fascinating interpretation.
It makes you think about how, historical events, especially those with religious significance, can be open to, multiple
interpretation, depending on your, perspective and beliefs.
Yeah,
It's a great example of how even seemingly, straightforward events can have these layers of meaning and symbolism that can be, unpacked and debated for generations.
for sure.
Yeah.
And it also underscores
Yeah.
the power of belief and how it can, shape our understanding of
Shape our understanding
the world around us.
of the world around us, absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have,
exploring the Orthodox perspective
a lot to think about.
on the Roman Catholic Church,
Definitely.
the historical and theological complexities of
Right.
their relationship,
Yeah.
and, the potential challenges and opportunities that
That lie ahead.
lie ahead.
For sure.
It's been a really insightful journey,
It has been, yeah.
and I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of this complex and often contentious relationship.
Yeah,
But I know there's still more to unpack.
there is definitely.
So I'm excited to
Yeah.
hear what you have to say
Great.
as we wrap up our deep dive in
Yeah.
the next part of our conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Cool. Or picking up where we left off, the author doesn't necessarily see the future of the Orthodox and Catholic churches as entirely bleak.
Okay.
It's more that he believes a true reunion would be detrimental to both.
Interesting take.
Yeah.
So if a merger's off the table, what does he propose as,
Right.
as a way forward?
He seems to suggest that the best path lies in each church focusing on its own internal spiritual development,
Okay.
rather than striving for this external union that he thinks would ultimately compromise the integrity of both faiths.
So it's more about each church deepening its understanding of its own traditions and beliefs,
Yeah.
rather than trying to blend them together.
Precisely.
Okay.
And he even hints that if the Catholic Church were to undergo a significant internal reform, moving away from what he sees as its emphasis on worldly matters
Right.
and back towards a more purely spiritual focus,
Yeah.
then perhaps a genuine dialogue could begin.
So it's not a complete shutting of the door. It's
Right.
more like a call for introspection.
A return to what he sees as the core
Yeah.
principles of Christianity.
And he brings up a really interesting point about the potential consequences of
Yeah.
a forced union, even if it were attempted with good intentions.
I'm curious to hear more about that.
Okay.
What kind of consequences does he foresee?
He suggests that such a union could actually lead to further divisions and conflict,
Okay.
both within the newly merged church and potentially even within the Catholic Church itself.
Help me understand that.
Okay.
How could a union aimed at bringing people together
Right.
actually end up causing more division?
He argues that a union based on compromise,
Okay.
where one or both churches would have to sacrifice essential elements of their beliefs or practices, could alienate those who hold those beliefs dear.
Yeah.
And this could lead to, factions forming within the new church,
Yeah.
those who support the union and those who feel that their traditions have been compromised.
So instead of creating unity,
Exactly.
it could actually,
Yeah.
exacerbate existing tensions and create new ones.
And he goes even further, suggesting that a forced union could spark a schism within the Catholic Church itself,
Okay.
with traditional Catholics rejecting what they would see as a betrayal of their own beliefs and practices.
So it's like trying to force a puzzle piece into a spot where it doesn't belong.
Right.
You might be able to make it fit,
Yeah.
but the picture won't look right.
It's not going to look right.
And you might even damage the pieces in the process.
You might break something. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It really captures his concern
Yeah.
that a forced union could lead to a distortion of both faiths
Mm-hmm.
rather than a true reconciliation.
Exactly.
And considering the whole thing about the Jesuits and their perceived agenda,
Right.
I mean, I can see how he might view any union under the current leadership
Yes.
as essentially leading to the Orthodox Church
Mm-hmm.
being subsumed by the Catholic Church.
And that's a point he emphasizes.
Yeah.
He argues that given the current state of affairs within the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
particularly under Pope Francis,
Right.
any union would likely result in the Orthodox Church having to accept the authority of the Pope.
Which they see as fundamentally unacceptable.
A non-starter, yeah.
So it boils down to a question of authority and autonomy.
Yeah.
The Orthodox Church sees itself as an equal to the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
not a subordinate.
Exactly. And that brings us back to his core argument,
Right.
that true unity can only arise from mutual respect and a recognition of each other's distinct traditions and beliefs.
Not from a forced merger that compromises the integrity of either faith.
Exactly.
So it's less about trying to erase the differences.
Right.
And more about finding a way to coexist and even learn from each other while respecting those differences.
Precisely.
Okay.
And he concludes by reiterating his belief that a forced union wouldn't be a true reconciliation of two branches of the same faith,
Right.
but rather a merging of two distinct religions,
Two completely different religions.
each with its own unique understanding of Christianity.
Yeah. It's a sobering thought,
It is.
but it really highlights the complexity of
Yeah.
these interchurch relations.
Absolutely.
But it's also a valuable reminder
Yeah.
that even within what might seem like a monolithic religious tradition, like Christianity,
Yeah.
there can be this wide range of perspectives and interpretations.
And understanding those different perspectives is crucial.
Yeah.
If we want to have meaningful dialogue and build bridges of understanding and respect across religious divides.
Speaking of different perspectives,
Okay.
I'm curious about something the author mentioned towards the end of the article.
Yeah.
He brings up the famous Fatima apparitions
Okay.
and asks whether they could be interpreted as a divine message,
Right.
urging the Catholic Church to return to orthodoxy.
Yes. That's a really intriguing point.
Yeah.
For those who might not be familiar, the Fatima apparitions refer to a series of events in Portugal in 1917, where 3 shepherd children claimed to have witnessed apparitions of the Virgin Mary.
Right. And I remember there was a lot of talk about this third secret
Exactly.
that was revealed years later,
Yeah.
and that supposedly contained this dire prophecy about the future of the world.
Exactly. And the author of this article, from his Orthodox perspective, suggests that perhaps this third secret could be interpreted as a call for the Catholic Church to return to what he sees as the true original faith of Christianity,
Right.
the faith preserved by the Orthodox Church.
It's a fascinating interpretation.
It is, yeah.
It really makes you think about how historical events, especially those with religious significance,
Right.
can be open to multiple interpretations depending on one's perspective and beliefs.
It's a great example of how even seemingly straightforward events can hold layers of meaning and symbolism
Yeah.
that can be unpacked and debated for generations.
And it also underscores the power of belief and how it can shape our understanding of the world around us.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have, yeah.
Exploring the Orthodox perspective on the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
The historical and theological complexities of their relationship, and the potential challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
It's been an incredibly insightful journey.
It has been, yeah.
And I feel like I have a much deeper understanding
Yeah.
of this complex and often contentious relationship.
Good.
But I know there's still more to unpack.
There is, yeah.
So I'm excited to hear what you have to say as we wrap up our deep dive in the next part of our conversation.
Looking forward to it.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive here, looking at the Orthodox view of the Roman Catholic Church,
Yeah.
I'm really struck by how much we've covered.
It's been a lot, yeah.
You know, we've explored this perspective that many people might not even be familiar with.
Right. It's not something you hear every day.
Right.
But it's a valuable one, I think.
Yeah, it's given us this chance to see the Catholic Church through a different lens, you know.
Absolutely.
One that highlights that tension
Yeah.
between its religious and political roles.
That's right.
And we've delved into those, you know, those theological differences
Right.
that have led to centuries of separation.
Yeah.
The author we've been discussing, you know, he sees these differences as stemming from what he believes are theological innovations introduced by the Catholic Church. Innovations that he believes, you know, stray from the true teachings of the early church fathers.
Exactly.
And we can't forget about his focus on the Jesuit order.
Of course not.
You know, he portrays them as this powerful force within the Catholic Church.
A very influential group.
Yeah.
One that he believes is really pushing this secular and globalist agenda.
Which, again, it's, you know, a perspective that might be controversial to some.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember that even within a single faith, there can be a wide range of interpretations and viewpoints.
And understanding those different perspectives is so essential for, you know, for meaningful interfaith dialogue.
It's about recognizing that complexity of religious history, and the various factors that have, you know, shaped the relationship between these different branches of Christianity.
So we've seen how he believes the Catholic Church's emphasis on social justice.
Yes.
And its, you know, its perceived embrace of secular values have really contributed to that divide.
That's a key part of his argument, for sure.
And, you know, and we explored his belief that a true reunion between the Orthodox and Catholic churches is not only, you know, impossible, but potentially even harmful.
Yes, he really believes that.
He argues that such a union would require one church to basically subsume the other, leading to, you know, a loss of identity, a compromise of their core beliefs. So instead, he advocates for each church to kind of focus on its own spiritual development.
Yeah, to kind of go their separate ways and really focus on their own internal journeys.
And maybe through that process of internal reform and a renewed focus on what he sees as, you know, the true essence of Christianity, maybe a genuine dialogue could eventually emerge.
It's a possibility, but he's not, you know, he's not holding his breath.
It's definitely a perspective that, you know, invites us to think critically about the role of religion in the modern world.
It's a big question. Yeah. And it's one that we all need to grapple with.
For sure. And the, you know, and the challenges of reconciling tradition with this ever-changing landscape of society.
It's a constant
it really is
struggle to find that balance.
Well, it's been a fascinating exploration.
It has been,
And I hope it's, you know, sparked your curiosity to learn more.
I hope so too.
As we conclude this deep dive,
I
want to leave you with this question that the author poses.
All right, let's hear it.
He asks whether the famous Fatima apparitions could be interpreted as a divine message urging the Catholic Church to return to orthodoxy.
It's a thought-provoking question.
It really is.
It asks us to think about, you know, different interpretations of history and maybe unexpected pathways toward, you know, greater understanding and unity.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey.
It's been my pleasure.
And we encourage you to continue exploring this fascinating and complex world of faith and belief.
Absolutely.